Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, boys and girls, for tuning into the Life Signatures Radio, which is a daily podcast focusing on teaching, motivating, and inspiring people on the subjects of purpose, productivity, and resilience. Three important aspects of our lives, they're like a three-chord stand. And therefore, if one is important, the other one is also important. If you remove one, life doesn't remain the same. We are in the middle of a series, my friends. We started talking about this 5 or so episodes back. The main agenda here is talking about our personal blockades, which are the things that we either consciously or unconsciously impose on ourselves that stop us from fulfilling our God-given potential. They are limitations that we put on ourselves. So today let us look at one of the detriments of doing this. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
So let me give you a recap. First of all, my definition of a blockade is simply something that we consciously or unconsciously put as a limit, and we readily accept it as a fact. Therefore, it hinders our progress. It is either a conscious or an unconscious limitation that we have readily accepted without maybe questioning, or maybe might have questioned, and at the end of the day we just gave up and accept that no matter what I do, this is how it's going to still be. And therefore we just mess up our growth and our potential. We can't get to our potential because we have put a limit onto it. This limit might have come from an experience. This limit might have come from living a life in a cultural way. In other words, you saw your grandparent doing some things and your father doing the same things, and you are doing the same thing, and in fact you're even teaching your children to do the same thing, and their children are doing the same thing. It could be a limitation, it could be a blockade. What are the detriments of doing this? Number one, we talked about this yesterday. If you live a life of a blockade, you basically are stifling your potential. And we discussed that in the episode yesterday. I don't want to go back there, but today let us just make this short and crisp. The second detriment to living a life of a blockade is that you end up living an average life. And remember, what did we say? We said initially that at times you might not even know that there is a possibility that you could get to. That I'm not talking about a possibility from the motivational, inspirational, aspirational angle. I'm talking from the reality. It could actually do happen. But you are not there, and you are living an average life. Now, this average is not maybe even from your eyes. It is from the eyes of the designer, the eyes of the creator. This guy is living an average life, or way below the average, way below their privileges. And you know why that is so? It is so because we have a limitation that we've put on ourselves. We have a blockade that we've put on ourselves. We created some kind of blockade, and we tell ourselves this far and not any farther. And I said in some episodes way back, I can't remember which series it is we're doing, but sometimes when we're talking about competition, we want to compete against other people. The standard becomes other people. And as long as we are beating other people, we think we've arrived. And yet the person that we're supposed to beat is not other people, it is ourselves. And therefore you can actually live and have a life of average for years on end, for decades on end. Why? Because there is an invisible, or maybe even a visible blockade that you've put in your mind, I've put in my mind. And I believe it is John Mason. I think there's a guy called John Mason. Probably he's the one who penned the famous book, The Enemy Called Average. I had, what's his name? I had this man called John C. Maxwell talking about the life of average in his famous book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. That's a very powerful book, by the way. I had him talking about average and I really laughed. I can't remember exactly what tickled me, but the way he described it was sinister and funny. But at some level, an average life is like, it's that way because of an existing limitation in someone's personal life. In my personal life, I might be living an average life because I have allowed this limitation, this blockade, whether it's spiritual, it's mental, whether it's behavioral, whatever it is, I have allowed it. Whether it's fear, whether it's the thought that I do not deserve, it's a blockade. There are different types of blockades. Maybe we can talk about different types of blockades later on. But there are different types of blockades. We allow these things as long as they exist. And they are very powerful in that we don't question them. We don't even have an idea to question them. We accept them hook, line, and sinker. An average life does not mean that you're not meeting your personal and life obligations and goals and stuff like that. It does not mean that you are not impacting and influencing as you should. In other words, what you might be calling success today, remember we talked about this, with whatever you've acquired, whatever it is that you're doing, what you might be calling success, right, will be, for lack of a better word, will be useless compared to what could be or what is supposed to be, compared to the potential that is supposed to come. And why is that? There is a blockade. Probably this blockade is ignorance, that you do not know you can get there, you should get there. Ignorance because you do not want to know you are okay with being okay. You are comfortable with being where you are. You do not want, everything is smooth, man. I don't want to stretch. I don't want to mess up my life. Everything is working like clockwork. Everything is in place like I need it to be in place. And therefore I just have this blockade that this is enough. At least I am not bothering someone. I am not living in debt. I was speaking to someone some time back, a serious business mogul, and he was laughing at the prospect of people saying that they're not going to borrow. And he was wondering, how are you going to grow? He was saying that the people who normally say they cannot borrow, I normally lose respect for them because I know that they cannot be able to risk, but I don't know where I got there. The point is, you might say, I do not want to do X, Y, Z because my life as it is right now, it's fine. I'm good. I've got my acre of land. I've got my family. I've got my house. I've built my house. I have my job. I have my incomes are building. I'm okay. I'm not bothering anybody. I'm paying my rent. I'm paying my taxes. I'm not bothering anybody. Now let me tell you this. It's good for you. That's okay. That's perfect. People should aspire for that. But what I'm saying is that from the angle, from the look, from the idea, from the gauging from the yardstick or from the scales of the Creator, and from the putting into consideration the potential that they put inside of us, chances are that we could be living way below our privileges. We could be living an average life because we have a blockade in there. Millions of people do exist in this bracket, just like those who do not want to explore their potential. I mean, by the way, the so-called arriving that we fight for, we want to arrive. We want to be seen that we have arrived. When I was growing up in the village, arriving meant going to the city. It doesn't matter where you lived in the city, but just going to the city, being known as a city boy, it was coveted so much. As long as you're in the city, you've quote-unquote arrived. It doesn't matter how much you guys are struggling. So this element, this idea of arrivalism, it's a good aspiration, but I'm afraid to say that it is not the target, it's not the goal of the Creator, in my opinion. We can end up living a life that is just about average because we've allowed ourselves to quote-unquote arrive. So we live an average life, which, by the way, when someone shows you, you will even be amazed at what they are doing. I mean, they have bought their own house, they have their own car, their family is intact, they have their own land and so on. They have a good title as a manager or as a director in an organization. But that life, in direct contrast to what is required of them in terms of their potential, it can actually be a life of average. That is the conundrum there. Anyway, so tomorrow we're going to continue talking about this aspect. We're going to look at one more detriment to this idea of having a blockade in your life. But until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.